The unexpected could happen to you. You could lose your job, the roof could leak, your car could break down. You need to have an emergency fund in order to get through a difficult financial situation. To help us with strategies to build an emergency fund and where to put our money to have access to it when we need it is Richa Hingorani. She is the Regional Financial Planning Consultant with RBC. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here, Patty.
All right. We know we need to have an emergency fund. How much money do you need in an emergency fund?
Great question. Nobody is immune these days, just like you said. Now, how much would depend on what are the expenses. So it's a critical exercise that I think everybody needs to sit down and think about, because you want to have the peace of mind and not panic in such unforeseen situations. And the way to do that would be to have the emergency fund. The way you would be able to tackle that best is budgeting exercise.
So you really need to know your numbers.
Absolutely.
Now, I've heard that sometimes people will say you need 3 months of living expenses, 6 months, maybe now it takes 9 months. Which camp are you in?
And I'm not in one of these camps. And what's going to drive that number of months with the rule of thumb, whether it's 3, 6, or 9, it's going to be individual. And where that comes from, whether you're a family, whether you're a single person, whether you're a senior, also depends on the kind of job type that you do. Just like I said, what's the number, what's the expenses that it takes?
So you got to know the numbers.
And then if you are in an industry where it's going to take you 8 months to get back to a comparable position, well, then you got to have 8 months worth of an emergency fund, versus someone else who may say, you know what, I could probably get back right into after a month or 2 months. So thinking about those factors as well, and thinking about how your spouse is doing, because those could be other sources of income.
No, that's a great point. If you're in a relationship, do you both need to have emergency funds based on your jobs?
I would probably say do the budgeting together. So when you're doing the budgeting together, the sources of income become two of you together. And when the expenses happen, then you're saying, great, one of my source of income is still there. I'm just filling the gap of the remainder. So the emergency fund is going to provide for that. So yes, both of you together create that emergency fund.
Now, we talk a lot about having the emergency fund, but how do you build it? Like, how do you even start? Because a lot of people are living very close to the margin, paycheck to paycheck right now.
It's one of those exercises. Losing the first 10 pounds is always the toughest.
It is.
Get started. The way to do that, there is no crystal ball to it. You got to sit down, and once you know what is that amount, after you do that expense exercise, automatic savings plan.
And that means money coming right out of your account, each paycheck, right into, where do you put it?
Savings account. And here's where the discussion needs to happen, because these are emergency funds. 3 things you need to think about when you're thinking where the money is going. 1, accessible.
Yes.
It's emergency.
Yes.
Car breaking down, loss of job, or things like that. I need it to meet my day-to-day expenses. Funds that are going to be accessible, they should be liquid. So we're not talking about cashing out RSPs, or we're not cashing out retirement plans, or selling long-term investments, because they could be financial implications. And when you're panicking, you're bound to make those hasty decisions, right, which are not going to turn out good. So you're keeping some funds that are liquid, and I'm going towards something like a savings account. Safety is going to be another thing when you're thinking about the investment choice, because if these are emergency funds, you're not playing them up with the market volatility.
And it's such a hard thing to do, because people want their money working for them, and it's sitting in a savings account earning next to nothing. Before I let you go, though, what if you don't have the fund, you're just starting to build? What options do you have?
I would be very afraid to say, saying, first of all, start with that exercise. Don't get in that trap, but don't get into debt. But if there is no other option, line of credit could be one of those accessible sources right away. And I think it, again, is one of those peace of mind actions. So even though you've just got started on that emergency fund, and if something happens tomorrow, you need to have some of those funds accessible, and line of credit options work really, really well with such sources.
But as you said, that's your second choice.
Totally.
The first choice is the liquid funds in a savings account.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks a lot,
Thank you,
Rachel.
Patty.
It's now time to answer some of the questions that we've been receiving all week long. Let's take a look.